Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Joe Otto is out again today. He had something come up last minute, so he's not able to join us today. So it's just going to be me solo. But what we're talking about today is we're going to expand on what we talked about yesterday, which is the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old who is now being charged with murder, felony homicide, in Wisconsin. We're going to go through in depth that case, the new developments that we've learned in the last 24 hours, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I have dove into overnight to further explain why I truly believe that this is a case of self-defense. So we will be labeled as graphic by Facebook because we're going to show videos again that are graphic. So viewer discretion advised. I'm not showing the really, really bad ones. I'm not showing the really, really bad ones, but I am going to show the ones that basically show shots being fired. Not going to show any of the gruesome, bloody ones. There is a clip in there where one of the individuals who was shot uses very, very bad language. I want to make sure everyone knows that language is, I'm not endorsing that language. I thought about bleeping it, but in the interest of full transparency, I think people deserve to know what one of these people who was shot and killed said to Kyle just a few minutes, a little while before he was shot. So we're going to play that in its entirety. We're not going to censor that at all. And just to jump to it, he says the N-word. So just want to make sure people understand that I am not endorsing that language at all. I don't want to be canceled. But it's important to show the context of what he said. So let's get into this. Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. If it's not, welcome back. 3 things we need to do to get this video out to more people. You need to hit the share button, you need to like the video, you need to comment. Those 3 things combined tell Facebook that this is a better stream. If you're on YouTube, you need to make sure you like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and comment. That's how both of those websites use their algorithms to say that this is worthwhile, and they put it in people's feeds. Anyway, all those disclaimers aside, let's get right into it. I want to play the clip that we played yesterday, which is of the first shooting in the parking lot. And when we played this yesterday, I said I didn't know enough to decide one way or another whether it was justified. We're going to play this, and then I'm going to play the additional footage that came to light that gives me a better idea. But first, let's play that original clip. Let's play cut 1.
Ooh, he shot him. Get back. Come on. Shot him, man. He shot him. Shot him, man. He laid him out. He laid him out, you guys.
So that was the original footage we showed yesterday, where we couldn't say one way or another whether it was justified or not, because it's very shaky footage, and it didn't show the lead up to it. But since then, that lead up footage has come to light, and it's important to play that too, because it paints a bigger picture. So let's go ahead and play, I believe this is, cut 2.
Hey boys. Yeah, that's Antifa, man.
You see that?
You got a gun, baby. Ooh,
that is 2 different angles showing what happened.
he shot him.
Let's go ahead and play that again. Stop it and play it one more time. And I'll explain what to look for.
Yeah, that's Antifa,
So
man.
right there, they throw a Molotov
You got a
cocktail
gun, baby.
at him.
Ooh, they shoot.
He was chased into the parking lot by an angry mob, and they threw a Molotov cocktail at him. Now, that was not viewable in the videos that were circulating early yesterday morning when we planned our show yesterday. But today, that footage is available. And for that reason, I can say without any reservation that he was justified in the use of deadly force. He was being chased. They threw a Molotov cocktail. Just to make sure we're not making this up, let's put up image number 5. Image number 5. This is a combined image of all the different people who were attacking him over the course of the night. You can literally see on that top, we'll get to the bottom ones in a bit, but you can literally see on that top one, the person threw a Molotov cocktail at him. What's a Molotov cocktail? A Molotov cocktail is a glass bottle full of gasoline or some kind of accelerant that's lit on fire so that when it crashes and breaks, the gasoline or the accelerant sprays everywhere and gets whatever it hits caught on fire. You can see that. People said that's a brick. Bricks don't fly through the air when they're on fire. They just don't. So we're going to say this throughout. Anyone who claims that Kyle Rittenhouse was not justified in using deadly force in that parking lot, we'll get to the bottom ones in a second, but in that parking lot, what you are saying is that he should have just sat down and burned to death. That he had no right to defend himself from a mob throwing a Molotov cocktail at him. That's what you're saying. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it at all. So let's play that clip one more time so you can see. This is a couple of angles. It's put together. We didn't put it together. Someone else did. They did a very good job with it. But it puts together the interaction leading up to that shooting in that auto service parking lot. Watch as the Molotov cocktail gets thrown, and watch how he returns fire after that's thrown towards him. Let's go ahead one more time and play cut 2.
Hey, boys. Yeah, that's Antifa, man. Oh, we got a gun, baby. Oh, they shoot. Oh, he shot him. Get back. Shot him, man. Shot him. Shot him, man.
So you can see there, he is checking on the guy.
He laid him
pulls
out.
out his phone.
He laid him out.
Lots of people said he's calling 911. I don't know, but he's calling someone. And he only starts to run when he sees the mob coming back at him. Right here, he sees the mob coming at him, and he runs. He runs away. And the mob chases him down and says, go get that guy. He just shot someone. That video shows him being chased by people. They throw what looks to be a Molotov cocktail at him. And when he gets trapped in between cars, he turns around and shoots the first person coming at him. That's self-defense. It's self-defense. We're going to talk about the issue of him being 17 in a second. But if we're purely talking about whether or not, in that very instance, he has the right to use deadly force against someone trying to burn him alive, yes, he absolutely does. He does. He absolutely does. Let's go ahead. Let's play the next clip. We played this yesterday, but let's play it again for people who are just watching it the first time. And remember, hit the share button, like the video, comment. Let's go ahead and play cut 3. So here he's running down the street. They're attacking him. He gets sucker punched in the head. He trips and falls right there. They say, get his ass. They start going after him. And people start getting shot. That guy right there, he runs up to him, sees he has a gun, backs away, acts as if he's giving up, and then runs back towards him. And as we're going to cover in a second, that guy who got shot in the arm had a handgun in his hand. We can cut it here. The next part, he runs to police. So when they say that he fled justice, it just isn't true. He jogged over to police with his hands up. The fact that he wasn't apprehended in that moment and he went home doesn't mean he fled justice. But that's what that was. He was on the ground and he was attacked because he tripped. So the question we're asking is, in that moment when you were on the ground and you were being beaten, you were being kicked in the face, someone is running towards you with a gun. The question we are asking is, in that very moment, does he have the right to use deadly force because he is in fear for his life? Let's go ahead and put that image up again. Let's go with, image 5. So you can see at the bottom of it, on image 5, The bottom three are the three people that were attacking him on the ground. And you can see it. One is hitting him in the head with a skateboard. The other one's kicking him in the face with a jump kick. And the other one, as you can see there, the quote-unquote paramedic is running up to him, holding a handgun with it in the ready position, pointed at him. And that picture is actually really unique because the other ones don't show it pointed at him. That one does. So the question we're first asking is, having tripped and fallen, he has two options. Two options. Is he allowed to defend his life? Or by tripping and falling, is he resigned to being lynched? Those are the two options. There's no middle ground here. He either had the right to defend himself, or he didn't, and he had to just sit back and take the lynching. Which is it? I say he had the right to defend himself. Anyone being hit in the head with a skateboard, being jump kicked in the face, being rushed with a guy holding a handgun, has the absolute right to use deadly force to defend their life. I mean, it seems obvious. It seems completely obvious. This is where I want to talk about who he shot. And this is where you really got to hit that share button. Because what we learned about the victims, his victims, what we learned about them in the last couple days, startling. In the last day, startling. He is being branded as a white supremacist, as a terrorist, as someone evil. The media is literally giving him the Nick Sandmann treatment. And yes, Nick Sandmann's lawyer is working with other lawyers to provide him legal defense. Yesterday, he was given a public defender. He would die in prison if he had a public defender. He would rot. Nick Sandmann's lawyer is working on getting him an actual legal team to defend him. Because what's at stake here is the right to self-defense. We're going to talk about the issue of him being 17 a little bit later. Because it's interesting to it. It has me waffling. But I do still think that there is a legal defense for him. But before we do that, I want to talk about who got shot. And I'm not victim shaming. I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead or anything. It's important that you understand who he was dealing with in that moment. Because the mainstream media is saying that he opened fire on peaceful protesters. And as you saw in those images, they were anything but peaceful. Hit him in the head with a skateboard, kick him in the face, rushing with a gun. Let's go ahead and put up image number 9. This is courtesy of Andy No, great reporter who's done great work with Antifa. Image number 9. This man's name is Joseph Rosenbaum. He is 36. He is a convicted criminal. He is a registered sex offender, was, I guess. He was a registered sex offender for a sex crime involving a minor. He was the first person that Kyle allegedly shot. He was the man who allegedly, I mean, we saw it, chased Kyle into that parking lot. That's who he was. Registered sex offender for a sex crime involving a minor. He's not a peaceful protester. No. And this is where I got to warn you, if you have kids present, you got to put on the earmuffs. This is what Joseph Rosenbaum was saying to Kyle Rittenhouse just a little bit before he was shot and killed for chasing him and trying to kill him in a parking lot. Let's go ahead and play cut 5.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of...
Sorry. Cut 4. That one, we'll get to that one in a second. Cut 4.
We just go on. Hey, somebody control it.
So they're all...
We gotta stick together.
The victim is going to appear shortly in a pink shirt, a shaved head, and watch what he's saying. Kyle and the other people. Here he comes.
Shoot me, nigga. Shoot me, nigga.
There he is.
Bust on me, for real.
Apologies for the language. Apparently, sex offenders don't have clean language. I apologize for that. We don't endorse his language in any way, shape, or form. I wanted to show that because that is minutes before he was shot and killed. And it shows him not as a victim. No, it actually shows him walking up to Kyle and to other patriots and saying, shoot me, and then using the N-word. Shoot me. Shoot me. He's the victim. He's the first peaceful protester, according to the media, who got shot. Again, for chasing Kyle into a parking lot, cornering him in between cars after a Molotov cocktail was thrown at him. That's what he was. Let's go ahead and put that image up again. Let's put image number 9 up. That man screaming at Kyle, shoot me, N-word. He was, I mean, he's not anymore. He was a registered sex offender for a crime involving a minor. And that's excellent reporting from Andy. No, I did verify that that's him. You can see it. It's him. So that's the first person who got shot. Let's go ahead and put up image number 10. This is the second person. It's very unfortunate that he died. Anthony Huber, 26. Again, excellent reporting from Andy. No, he has a criminal history that includes charges of battery and repeat domestic abuse. And here you can see him, before he was shot, hitting Kyle in the face with a skateboard. Now, you might think that that is innocent. You can kill someone by hitting them in the head with a skateboard. Absolutely. Absolutely. That, when he did, that's assault. That's, I mean, you can even argue it's attempted murder at that point. It's sad. I don't like anyone dying. But the media's narrative that Kyle opened fire on peaceful protesters. This guy, Anthony Huber, not only did he have a criminal record, but he was the guy beating Kyle in the face with a skateboard. That's how much the media is lying to you. That is how much the mainstream media is lying to you. I have to ask again, please hit the share button. Please continue commenting. Please like the video. Okay, let's get to the third image. Let's go to image number 11. This is the man who was shot and survived, the quote-unquote paramedic. His name is, I'm going to butcher this, Gage Grosskreutz, 26. According to Andy Knows reporting, he's a member of the People's Revolution movement. He was filmed chasing after Kyle with a pistol in his hand. He was shot at close range in the upper arm. He has a criminal record that includes being intoxicated while armed with a gun. He is a felon. He is a felon. He had a firearm in his hand, and he was a felon. Felons aren't allowed to hold firearms, folks. They're not allowed to do it. I feel like, let's go ahead and put up image 2. Image 2. This is Gage running up to Kyle when he's on the ground, holding a handgun. Felon in possession of a handgun. That is illegal under both Wisconsin law and federal law. And he is being labeled a victim. He was a victim. A felon ran up to a 17-year-old kid who fell in the street. A felon ran up to him with an illegally owned firearm, pointed it at him. And that 17-year-old is now being accused of committing a crime for defending himself. That's where we're at here, folks. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? We're in clown world. This is clown world. People say clown world. This is what clown world looks like. A felon runs up to a 17-year-old with a gun, presumably to kill him. And the 17-year-old is the villain for shooting that felon in the arm. It's clown world. This is absolutely clown world. I mean, does anyone disagree? If you disagree, you're free to tell me. Let's go with this image is a little graphic. I will warn you. Let's go to image 3. This is that felon, Gage, shot in the arm, holding a firearm. He is committing a felony. What he just did, in broad view of the cameras, was felony attempted murder, felony illegal possession of a firearm, whole host of crimes, both Wisconsin and federal crimes that this Gage guy committed. But no, he's not behind bars, is he? He's not being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Kyle is. Because Kyle, we are told, a 17-year-old, had no right to possess a firearm. Kyle, we are told, came from out of state looking for trouble. Not true. He was in Kenosha all the time, actually cleaning up graffiti that the BLM mob left behind during past protests. Protests, I use that term very, very loosely. He didn't flee the state. He lives just across the state line. He jogged over to police officers after the shooting. They didn't arrest him, and he went home for the night. He's not fleeing the state. Am I off base here? Tell me if I'm off base here. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills again. We just went through the 3 people that got shot. Each one of them had a criminal history. Each one attempted to kill Kyle. And they're the martyrs. He's the villain. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. One was a convicted pedophile. The other one was a domestic abuser. And the other one had a firearm felony, meaning he could never own a gun again. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it very interesting that there's a shooting at a BLM protest, and everyone who gets hit happens to have a rap list a mile long? Isn't that interesting? I feel like that's interesting. I feel like if someone was to start shooting innocent protesters, that they would actually hit innocent people. I don't think it's a coincidence that all 3 people who were shot have criminal records, were all photographed trying to kill him, video trying to kill him. No, I mean, it speaks very, very much to the nature of BLM's protest, that when there's a shooting like this, everyone who gets shot happens to have a rap list a mile long. We're getting a lot of trolls calling in. Mr. Producer Josh is doing his best to deal with them. Thank you, Josh. Everyone in the comment section, write thank you, Josh. Let him know that we all appreciate him screening the callers for their trolling. Thank you, Josh. Let's go. Let's keep going. So the ultimate question we're asked, we've just covered a bunch of it, and we'll go through it again for anyone who's just joined. We'll go through it at the end in a little wrap up. As individual moments, as individual little vignettes, when Kyle had a Molotov cocktail thrown at him, he had a legal right to defend his life from being burned alive, from being killed. When Kyle tripped and fell on the ground and then was kicked in the face, he was hit in the head with a skateboard, and a convicted felon charged him with a gun pointed at him. He had every right to be in fear for his life. Those little vignettes alone, if that's the only thing we knew, would absolutely justify this. Absolutely. Lots of comments for Josh. I love it. But there is an unforeseen wrinkle in the analysis, which is that he was 17 years old. Federal law only deals with the purchase of firearms, because federal law can only deal with interstate commerce. That's it. So the feds can determine who's allowed to purchase a gun. The states can either make those restrictions tougher, or they can place tougher restrictions on who can possess a gun, right? Plenty of kids throughout the years have got 22 rifles for their birthday. They aren't felons for getting a 22 for their birthday because they didn't buy it illegally. It was gifted to them by someone who bought it legally, right? Plenty of kids had their own hunting rifles. Go back through the years. It is not necessarily illegal for someone under the age of 18 to have a firearm. It gets more complicated because he's an Illinois resident, apparently, and he was in Wisconsin. Neither state typically allows someone under the age of 18 to open carry. The question is that true? Is he a criminal for open carrying? And honestly, I think that there are solid arguments for saying, yeah, you weren't allowed to carry a gun. You shouldn't have been there. And again, none of this is talking about whether he should have been there or not. It isn't. I'm speaking to the individual vignettes of whether or not he was justified in using deadly force to protect his life. I think that's settled. I think that's pretty settled. If anyone disagrees that it's settled, that people were trying to kill him, let me know in the comment section. I think it's pretty settled. The question now is whether he was allowed to have the gun, and what if he was not allowed to have the gun, whether that would have precluded him from using that firearm to defend himself. Those are two questions. Let's go ahead and put up image number 8. This is Wisconsin law. This is 948.60 in the Wisconsin statutes, and it deals with the possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. And I'll read a little bit of it. In this section, dangerous weapon means any firearm, loaded or unloaded, any electric weapon, yada, yada, yada. They go through all the different types of weapons. But right there, you can see it says firearm. And that says under 2A, any person under 18 years of age who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. So he's guilty of a misdemeanor. If he is not allowed to have that weapon in public, it's a misdemeanor. Not a felony, as people have suggested. It's a misdemeanor. Then there's exceptions. And you go down a little bit more. There's an exception for target shooting. There's an exception for hunting. And then you look at Section 3B. This section does not apply to a person under 18 years of age who is a member of the Armed Forces or National Guard and who possesses or is armed with a dangerous weapon in the line of duty. This section does not apply to an adult who is a member of the Armed Forces or National Guard and who transfers a dangerous weapon to a person under 18 years of age in the line of duty. Now, where am I going with? Where am I going with? He's under 17. He idolized police. He's not a police officer. He was in the National Guard. Where am I going with this line of reasoning? And I'll tell you. Let's go ahead and put up image 7. Image 7 is 10 U.S.C. Section 246. It is the legal definition of militia. It is U.S. law, and it defines what the militia is. So when you see the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. When you see militia in the Constitution, this is the legal definition for what that means. 10 U.S.C. Section 246. There's a couple other sections, but this is the relevant one. And it says, Section A, the militia of the United States consists of all able-bodied males at least 17 years of age and, except as provided in Section 313 of Title 32, under 45 years of age who are or who have made a declaration of intention to become citizens of the United States and of female citizens of the United States who are members of the National Guard. So, any able-bodied male between the ages of 17 and 45 is technically a member of the United States unorganized militia. The militia is this. I think this is important. When the founders wrote the Second Amendment, that was intended so that militia members, people who weren't part of an actual uniformed military, would have firearms owned personally, and when called upon, could use those firearms in defend of country or community. That was the goal. When you got called for militia service, you weren't handed a rifle. You were expected to bring your own. And the Supreme Court went through this. Right? The Supreme Court in 2008, Heller versus D.C., they said that the city's ban on handguns was unconstitutional because handguns are useful for militia participation, and they are useful in self-defense. The militia part of that is still valid. So Kyle, being 17 years old, whether he knew it or not, is a member of the unorganized militia of these United States. He is, according to the framers, according to law, expected, when called upon, to show up with a firearm of his own. This is where it gets weird, because our firearm laws, for the longest time, our gun laws were very restrictive. The Supreme Court in 2008 came out with their Heller decision and got rid of the whole, it's only for the National Guard, and said the Second Amendment protects an individual right. But all these militia laws are still on the books. And all of the gun control laws saying that you have to be 18 are still on the books. There's a lot of weirdness going on here, and the courts haven't really settled this yet. So if he is a member of the unorganized militia per U.S. law, and if he is expected, when called upon, to show up for militia service with a firearm of his own that is readily useful for militia service, and he goes out into his community. Yeah, sure, he lives right across the state line, but he's in Kenosha all the time. You can see it from his Facebook posts. He considered that to be his community. He goes out into his community after the governor refuses to put out the National Guard, after the police mistakenly refuse to ask for the National Guard. He goes out in his community as a member of the unorganized militia with other people believing to be the same, goes out in his community not to cause trouble, just to make sure that people don't get killed. Is that an argument? I think that that's an argument. Now, it's interesting because that's something that would have to go to the Supreme Court. No local or county or state court is going to say, yes, you had the right to have a firearm because you're a member of the unorganized militia pursuant to Section 10 of the U.S. Code. No one's going to say that. To 10 U.S.C. No one's going to actually say that. But it is an argument that can be made. And it's an argument that really, frankly, should be made for most of the gun control laws on the books. If a 17-year-old is expected to show up for militia service with a rifle they own, how can the federal firearm statutes restrict a 17-year-old from buying a gun? I mean, that's where our gun control laws do not mesh with the founders' intentions, where it's completely obvious. I think that's a legitimate defense. Now, will it work? I don't know. But if we're just talking intellectually, the idea of a 17-year-old going out and participating in some kind of militia activity is not radical. Let's go ahead and put that image up again, image number 7. They're calling him a radical because he was 17, he was out with the militia, and U.S. law, 10 U.S.C. Section 246, says that he is a member of the unorganized militia. It is not radical for him to be out there. Now, the other questions that come in is, was he called? Typically, militia needs to be called up. It needs to be called up by the state, by a local official, by the feds. He wasn't called up. That's where this kind of hypothetical argument goes off the rails a little bit. But you can make the argument that the leaders in charge, the leadership, the governor of Wisconsin, so gripped by politics, refused to call up the National Guard, not because it wasn't necessary, but because he didn't want to do so politically. And that's where the Second Amendment's true meaning and purpose comes into play. The Second Amendment isn't there to determine when you're allowed to defend your community. The Second Amendment's there so that you can defend your community when the government fails to or refuses to, or when you're defending against the government. That's why the militia exists. The militia exists because you cannot rely on the government to keep you safe at all times. Supreme Court, Gonzalez versus City of Castle Rock, Colorado, 2003, I want to say? Yeah, I think it's 2003. Gonzalez v. Castle Rock, might be off by a year or two. That case, gruesome. We've talked about it on the podcast before. Gruesome, gruesome, gruesome. That case, there was a woman whose children had been taken by her estranged husband. I don't remember if he was separated or divorced. He was taken by their estranged father. She calls the police up, saying, he's taking my children, please, please, please help me. Calls the police all night. Eventually, she goes to the police station and begs them, saying, I know he took them. I have an idea where he took them. He's going to hurt them. Please, 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 can you go help me? The police did nothing all day long. Eventually, I believe that the estranged husband/father showed up at the police station and got in a shootout with the cops. They killed him, and when they opened his trunk, they found the bodies of the 2 children he had taken. They were already dead. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court. I believe it was 2003, early 2000s. Went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the challenge was that I told the police to help me. They refused to. They have a constitutional obligation to help me. And the Supreme Court said no. That's right. I think it was actually led by Justice Scalia, or he was at least part of it. Supreme Court said no. Police do not have any obligation to help you as an individual. Their obligation is to society as a whole. And there are going to be times where in order to help society as a whole, they have to deliberately neglect an individual. And so the Supreme Court threw out that argument and said, no, you do not have, the police do not have a constitutional obligation to defend you as an individual. With that precedent, with what we've talked about, the militia, with the Second Amendment's true purpose, you cannot make the intellectual argument that it was completely out of bounds for someone like Kyle to say, I want to go out and defend my community. If he believed that the government was so corrupt, not from money, but from political interests, that they were refusing to send out the National Guard for political reasons, and the police were not doing their jobs, and the police were not asking for the National Guard, which they admit they didn't, it is not unreasonable for someone like Kyle, age 17, by law a member of the unorganized militia, to say, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to defend my community. I mean, are we forgetting how young many of the founding fathers were during the Revolution? They were young. They were young kids. Not all of them were over 21. Not all of them were over 18. Well, most of the founding fathers were over 18, but they were pretty young. This idea that there's no legal, constitutional, rational basis for a 17-year-old to have a gun to defend his community, there is one. You can say that it's not good enough, and that's fine. I'm not saying that this is an airtight argument. I'm just saying that if we're going to have an actual intellectual conversation about it, let's be honest. Don't say that Kyle killed peaceful protesters when every single one of them has a criminal record and they were all trying to kill him. Right? Let's have the intellectual argument. Let's talk about this. I think it's important. I really do. So let me know if you think I'm off base. Again, I don't guarantee that this would actually hold up in court. I don't, because the courts do not truly believe in this originalist interpretation of the Second Amendment. They don't believe that Kyle, being a member of the militia at age 17, would have a leg to stand on to defend his community when he believed that the higher-ups were refusing to do so. I'm not saying that it's a foolproof argument. I'm just saying that it's not as cut and dry as the media is making out to be. It just isn't. Let's talk about Jacob Blake for a bit. Let's put up image number 4. This is a screen grab of Jacob Blake walking back to his car with what appears to be a knife in his hand. Now, I've heard some people say it isn't a knife. Some people say it is. Some people say that it is hard to tell what it is. So in the interest of not being fact-checked, I'm going to say right now, I don't know whether that's a knife or not. Maybe this dude just has really long fingers. I don't know. What I do know is that the state attorney general came out yesterday with a statement saying that officers did find a knife on the driver's side floorboard of Jacob Blake's car. So, one of two things are true. Either he was carrying that knife when they were yelling, drop the knife, which seems very plausible, or he didn't have it, he has really long, freaky fingernails, he got to the car, opened the door, reached down to grab a knife that was on the floorboard. Whichever one of those is true, I don't know which one's true. One of them has to be true, because there was a knife on the floorboard. Either way, the argument that Jacob Blake was an unarmed black man goes out the window. He goes out the window. You can't say that someone is unarmed when he was either holding the knife or reaching for a knife. You can't have it both ways. Kenosha burned over a lie. Kenosha burned over a lie. Did you see what happened in Minneapolis last night? There was a suspected murderer killed himself because he didn't want to get captured by police. And they went and looted grocery stores, department stores, because he committed suicide. This isn't rational anymore, which is why it's so important to tell the truth and to focus on what truth is and to actually report things accurately, which is why, again, I'm saying if you haven't already, hit the share button, like the video, and continue commenting. It just seems like this is deliberate. We're being told that Kyle killed peaceful protesters, and they all had a rap sheet. One was a convicted pedophile. The other one was convicted of illegal handling of a firearm, a felon. He had a gun. No one's mentioned that on the news. The other one was a domestic abuser who was videotaped hitting him in the face with a skateboard. He got shot in the stomach. He hit him in the face with a skateboard and he got shot in the stomach. But the media is telling us that Kyle killed 2 peaceful protesters and injured a third. They're lies. These are lies, people. And the fact that the media is lying, the sheriff's department is lying, the local prosecutor is lying, down the list, they're all lying. Either they're ignorant and they don't know, or they're lying. It's one or the other. And their lies have consequences. When you lie about something this significant, it has consequences. There are what? The NBA is boycotting. Major League Baseball canceled games. My college canceled one of their practices I just saw in the name of racial justice. Over a lie? Over a guy getting shot because he either had a knife or was reaching for a knife? Over a 17-year-old kid having a Molotov cocktail thrown at him and shoots the guy in the head for doing it? Or a 17-year-old kid who falls on the ground, gets kicked, beaten with a skateboard, and someone runs up to him pointing a gun at him? That's why you're canceling games? I mean, these lies have consequences. And the media is just able to do it with impunity. They're able to lie. He wasn't unarmed. Kyle didn't kill peaceful protesters. And there is a legal, constitutional, common law argument that he had a justification for having a gun with him. But no one talks about it. Yeah, and people are saying he had a GoFundMe. He had a couple different GoFundMe accounts, and they took it down. BLM is getting millions of dollars through their GoFundMe stuff. Millions. Millions and millions of dollars, and it's a terrorist organization that wants to dissolve the nuclear family. But a 17-year-old kid forced to defend himself in exceptional circumstances, they're throwing the book at him. Here's how you know it isn't just cut and dry, right? The argument, oh, he's 17, he can never have a possession of a firearm. That means it's definitely illegal. Throw the book at him. You ever see those stories of kids that are home alone? Someone tries to break into the house, and the kid has to grab their dad or their mom's gun. The kid uses the gun to defend their life and kills or injures the burglar or whatnot, and they flee or they die on the scene. There's tons of stories out there like that. Kids who are forced to use their parents' guns to defend themselves. They do not get charged with felony underage possession of a firearm. They don't. They don't. Why don't they? Because in that moment, they needed to have a firearm to defend themselves. Because if a kid is home alone, under the age of 18, and someone breaks into their home, if it's a castle doctrine state, they do not have to retreat. If there's a gun nearby and there's an underage kid having his house broken into, he or she isn't a felon for using that firearm to defend themselves. And there's tons of cases like this. Tons of cases like this where underage kids use guns to defend themselves. Would that apply to Kyle? It might. Let's go ahead and put up image number 6. This is a court case. I don't think it's in the same circuit court, but it's an interesting discussion. This is U.S. versus Moore. This is a 2013 case. And just to give you a little backdrop for this, there was a defendant in the case who was a convicted felon. That felon used a firearm to defend himself. That felon claimed that even though it was illegal for him to possess the firearm at that moment, he had no choice and he had to use it to defend himself. And that it is unreasonable to charge him with a gun crime because he was a felon, because he still has the right to self-defense. And if there's a firearm next to him and someone's trying to kill him, he should be able to use the firearm. The court disagreed with him. But the court also said that there are rules that you can use to decide whether felons can, in moments of need, use a firearm to defend themselves. And let's put that image back up. The court reasoned that a defense for a felon would have to have 5 requirements. The defendant must have 1, reasonably feared death or serious injury from an imminent threat. 2, not recklessly placed himself in the path of that threat. 3, had no reasonable alternative to possession of the firearm to get out of the situation. 4, reasonably believed that the possession would avert the threat. And 5, maintain possession only as long as necessary to avoid the threat. That's for felons. Now again, Kyle is not a felon. He's under the age of 18. So those rules don't really completely apply to him because that's talking about felons possessing guns. But if there are rules that we can use to decide whether a felon is allowed to use a firearm to defend his life or her life, to say, blanket statement, that a 17-year-old can never use a firearm to defend his or her life, it's just not true. We've never seen a case like this, but that doesn't mean it's just a blanket statement that it's not true. If there are rules to decide whether or not a felon can use a firearm to defend himself, then you can't just say blanket statement that Kyle, there's no way that he could have possibly defended himself legally. You just can't do it. Can't do it. Now, I look for case law. There isn't really case law dealing with this situation. There isn't case law of a 17-year-old, legally a member of the militia, bringing a gun out in a peacekeeping mission, being chased by a mob, forced to deploy lethal force after having a Molotov cocktail thrown at him, forced to deploy lethal force after being kicked in the face, hit in the head with a skateboard, and rushed by a felon with a gun. We talk about felons with a gun. That felon, let's put his face up again. That's image 11. Our good friend Gage. This is the guy who was shot in the arm. He's a felon. He has no right to have a gun, and yet he had a gun on him. That case law we just went through, talking about did the felon absolutely need to use the gun in that moment, that doesn't apply here. If you watch the video, one of the videos, you can actually see that he had this in his back waistband, on his back, and he pulled it out as he was running. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, and that I'm the only one who sees this. I know you guys see it, but the fact that the mainstream media is still reporting Kyle Rittenhouse as this white supremacist. You see the Washington Post article that talked about how Kyle idolizes police, as if that's a bad thing. You see the news articles that said Kyle was front row at Donald Trump's rally earlier this year, as if that has to do with anything. The kid, they were trying to kill him. He defended himself. You can say that he shouldn't have been there. It's a fair argument. You can say that he probably wasn't legally allowed to have the gun. It's a fine argument. I've talked about how you can make a historical argument against it, but it's a long shot. I know. But you cannot say in that moment when he's being attacked with a Molotov cocktail, he's being kicked, he's being hit with a skateboard, he's being rushed by a felon with a gun. You cannot say in that particular moment that he had no right to fear for his life, and you cannot say in that particular moment he could not use the weapon, even if held illegally, in that moment to defend himself. Again, it goes against common law, it goes against our constitutional understanding of the Second Amendment, and arguably it would go against Wisconsin law. Very, very interesting. So we had a ton of people when we talked about this yesterday, and we had 5,000 on our stream yesterday. Facebook's playing games with us today. We maxed out at around 250. So please hit the share button because we want to get this out to as many people as possible. Hit the share button, like the video, and comment. Let me know. If you think I'm off base, fine. I don't contend that the arguments I've put forward are necessarily airtight. I don't contend that they are without a counter argument. I understand that they are. I get that. All I'm trying to show is that in this particular instance, we are being fed lies from the media. And those lies have a purpose, right? They want to be able to run headlines that say, boy in front row of Trump rally shoots innocent, peaceful protesters. That's the narrative they want to put forward. That a kid who waited in line to get front row at Trump's rally was out there shooting innocent protesters. That's what they want. They won't tell you everything else because they want this narrative to take root. it's really crooked. For anyone joining, let's go ahead and re-show the images of the people who got shot. Image number 9. This guy, Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, was the first one who got killed, and all these coming from Andy No, very good reporting. Minutes before he chased Kyle into a parking lot. Minutes before, he was heard, we played the video up, I don't know if I want to play it again. He was heard shouting at Kyle, "Shoot me, N-word. Shoot me, N-word." Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, is a registered sex offender for a sex crime involving a minor. So I just want to make sure we're absolutely clear. When the mainstream media says underage Trump supporter kills peaceful protester, the real story is 17-year-old boy flees angry pedophile, forced to shoot him in the head after having a Molotov cocktail thrown at him. That's what actually happened. Kyle, 17-year-old boy, ran away from a pedophile, convicted sex offender, registered sex offender for a sex crime involving a minor. He fled away from this guy. That guy chased him into a parking lot. After having a Molotov cocktail thrown at him, after being cornered, he was forced to use deadly force in defense of his life. Is that where we're at as a country? That if a kid's being chased by a pedophile, he's not allowed to defend himself? Is that really what we're going with? What's wrong here? I mean, this is crazy. A convicted pedophile tried to kill a 17-year-old kid. And the 17-year-old kid's the one behind bars. Now, the guy's dead. He can't be prosecuted. But if it was flipped, if their ideologies were flipped, I guarantee you the story would be Trump-supporting pedophile killed after cornering Black Lives Matter child. That's the narrative the media would push with that one. But because the kid was front row at a Trump rally, it's a different story. They're not talking about how he was cornered by an angry registered sex offender convicted of a sex crime with a minor. No. They're so willing to talk about him being underage, but not when he's being chased by an angry criminal pedophile. I mean, this is crazy stuff, folks. Let's keep going. Let's cover it again. I like covering these. Let's go to image 10. This is Anthony Huber. Feel bad. He was shot in the stomach and he died. Horrible. No one wants anyone to die at these kinds of things. We want everyone to go home at night. But prior to him being shot in the stomach, what was Anthony Huber doing? He was bashing Kyle in the head with a skateboard. And according to Andy No's reporting, Anthony Huber has a criminal history that includes charges of battery and repeat domestic abuse. So, we have a domestic abuser beating up on let's actually tell the story. A 17-year-old kid, after having a very traumatic experience with a sex offender pedophile, being chased into a sparsely lit parking lot, after being forced to kill the pedophile to escape. He then runs and trips and falls, and he's attacked by a domestic abuser. That 17-year-old kid is attacked by a domestic abuser and forced to use deadly force to defend himself. That's not the narrative. The narrative the media is pushing is that he shot an innocent, peaceful protester. Not that immediately after fleeing a pedophile, he got attacked by a domestic abuser. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. And then let's go to 11. After dispatching the pedophile who was chasing him, after shooting the domestic abuser who tried to bash his skull in with a skateboard, Kyle shot Gage Grosskreutz, I probably pronounced that wrong, a member of the People's Revolution Movement, a convicted felon who could not legally own a gun, but that felon ran up to him pointing a gun at him. So, poor Kyle. He's escaped the clutches of the sex offender pedophile. He has shot the domestic abuser, bashing his skull in. And what does he get for that? He gets a convicted felon charging him with an illegally possessed Glock handgun, pointing it at him, forcing him to use his own gun to defend himself. That's what happened in Kenosha. Now, you can have the argument, should he have been there? He probably shouldn't. I would have been there. As I've said on the podcast before, I have a 2.5-year-old kid and I have another one on the way. I'm not going anywhere near this stuff. No. And that's why when people say, oh, you want a civil war, I don't want a civil war. Who would want a civil war? There's too much to lose. Let's work out these differences peacefully. But to say that he's a criminal because he shouldn't have been there, I don't know. Say he's a criminal because there's no possible way a 17-year-old could make the argument that he needs to have a possession of a firearm to walk the streets at night. I don't know. It's interesting. It's not as cut and dry as the media is saying it is, though. Certainly not. The fact that Kyle is by federal law a member of the unorganized militia and is expected to show up for militia service if called upon with a personally owned weapon that is readily usable for militia service. The fact that that is in federal law says that the blanket statement that a 17-year-old has no business carrying a firearm defending his community from rioters and looters, it just isn't true. If we're going to have the argument that the only thing that didn't make it legal was that he wasn't called upon, then we can have that argument, sure. But then the issue is essentially a National Guardsman taking it upon himself to defend his community. Is he automatically a criminal because he wasn't called up? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. It's just not as cut and dry as the media is making it out to be. Dylan's asking, was he legally allowed to open carry at 17? We covered that earlier. The law says no, but there's an exception in the law which says if he is in active service, which is written in a way that doesn't necessarily specify what that active service would be. And we've covered federal law, which we can put up again. Let's put up image 7. 10 U.S.C. section 246, militia and the composition of classes, says that able-bodied males age 17 and up to 45 are members of the federal militia. So if we're going to have the debate over whether that constitutes militia service because he was not officially formally called up, we can have that debate. But the blanket statement that a 17-year-old would never have legal standing to carry a rifle like that, it just isn't true. Isn't true. Let's look at some of the YouTube comments before we finish up for tonight. AJ says, wow, I didn't know about the Molotov cocktail, changes my mind. Wish the news would report the whole story. Yeah. AJ saying people downvoting this or watching the whole video. I don't know. Fat Soul Crew says, I think you're overlooking the fact that Kyle killed 2 people and shot more. The victims you're slating didn't kill anyone. That's quite a difference. No, let's go ahead and put it up again. We can end with this. Let's put up image number 5. Everyone who was shot is in this photo for image 5. Every single one of those people that we went over is in this photo. You see a Molotov cocktail being thrown at him. That was our good friend. I believe that was our good friend Joseph Rosenbaum. Then on the bottom left, you can see Anthony Huber getting in on the action, hitting him in the head with the skateboard. I don't know who did the jump kick. I don't think he ended up being shot. But then on the bottom right, you can see our good friend Gage, the convicted felon, not letting federal firearms laws get in the way, and he run up to this 17-year-old boy pointing a gun at him. So the narrative that they were all peaceful protesters, I'm sorry, Fat Soul Crew, if that is your real name. It's just not true. Selena says a lot of what's going on is not natural. If you can still find the video, watch Shadowgate. Yeah, Shadowgate's getting taken off. We can't really show that because we probably just get banned on the spot. So yeah, I think we can wrap up. We can wrap up here. Let me know if you think I'm off base in the comment section. Please do hit the share button if you haven't already. Like the video and comment. And really helpful in us getting these out in front of more people. Please do that. I know I sound kind of pathetic asking you, but that's the only way we can really get in front of more people is by asking you to share. If you don't know, tonight we are doing our night 4 live stream of the RNC. Now, this is really interesting. Let me see if I can send a picture over to Mr. Producer so he can show up, put up a picture on the screen. Hold hold on, don't go anywhere. I want to show everyone what it's going to look like tonight. It's not working. That's the wrong picture. Oh, where is it? We don't have it. Anyway, the way we're going to do it is we are going to basically do it like Hollywood Squares. And we have the mainstream, unedited, unfiltered. The mainstream, unedited, unfiltered, showing the RNC. Right? That's going to be going. We're also going to then have... Let me see if I can find it. I think I can find it for you. Yeah, here we go. Let me send it to Mr. Producer. Here we go. All right, Mr. Producer, I just sent it over to you. So we will have the main feed, the RNC going, and then around it, it'll be like Hollywood Squares. We will have ABC, we will have PBS, we will have Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. Last night, we also tracked Hurricane Laura just to prove that I can do whatever I set my mind to. Laura probably won't be there. Maybe we will. Who knows? But that's what we're doing tonight. This is the stream from last night. But we're doing tonight, we're doing an RNC live stream, which also counting the number of times the mainstream media outlets cut away from the stream. I really like how this goes because I haven't seen anyone do it like this. It's really interesting when you watch it this way because you can see what prompts the different outlets to cut away. MSNBC cuts away anytime someone's talking about abortion. It just happens. Like last night, the sister was on there talking about abortion. MSNBC cut away. They then came back to Lou Holtz saying, Lou Holtz, football coach. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone covered Lou Holtz after they all skipped the nun. And then what did Lou Holtz do? He starts going off on abortion and on protecting the unborn. So it's really interesting. CNN likes to cut away when a black person is speaking at the RNC. They don't want people to see that Donald Trump has African Americans supporting him. Fox News cuts away all the time to let their paid commentators talk. ABC, I don't know what on earth they're doing, but they showed more Mulan commercials than they did the actual RNC. So tune in tonight. It's going to be going at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tune in tonight and check that out. It'll be really fun. We're going to schedule the live stream as soon as we're done with this. So check that out. What we're trying to do is Facebook's not always notifying people when we go live. So we're going to be pre-scheduling these out on our page to give you a chance to click the get reminder button. And then Facebook will notify you when we go live. Because Facebook is playing games with notifying people when we go live. So we're going to pre-schedule them. So in a few minutes, I'm going to pre-schedule that one for tonight. Check that out. Hit the get reminder notification and join the watch party. Last night we had 1,700 people watching with us. It was a lot of fun, a lot of comments. We're kicking out trolls. It was a ton of fun. So join us tonight for night 4 of the RNC. Watch us count the number of truths and count the number of times that the RNC cuts away. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. Remember that if you want to subscribe to the audio version, you can do so on any number of different sites: Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify. We're on TuneIn. We're on all different places. Podbean, right? iHeartRadio, everywhere. Check us out. All links in the description. Also, if you're listening to this on audio and you don't know this, we do go live on Facebook and YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So check us out there for the live stream. If you're listening on audio, you missed the images and the picture and the videos. So check us out there. We also have a link in the description for you to join our email newsletter. That's the way we're going to keep the show going if we get kicked by Facebook. Sign up for the email newsletter. We also send out action alert emails when there's important things going on in DC that you need to know about. So sign up for the email newsletter if you haven't already. And if you don't follow us already on Parler, do it at Conservative Daily, all one word. If you follow us, we'll be happy to follow you back. I think I went through the whole spiel. So again, my name is Max McGuire. I always say this, so I'll say it again. Joe's not here. Remember that the fight to take back our country clearly isn't over, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.